Welcome. If you're new here, welcome. If you're not new here, welcome back to the Professionally Casual Podcast with your host, me, Professionally Casual. And this is episode 7, if I'm not mistaken, which I'm pretty sure I'm not. So, episode 7. And today's going to be, we're just going to have a little bit of a discussion, a topic that I've been hearing for a lot of my life. Well, not a lot of my life, all right, I'm tripping, but a conversation that has been brought up many times before that I see all the time. Are video games boring now? Like, I feel like I hear that question or some sort of, rhetoric about how video games are so boring nowadays. I feel like I hear that a lot these days, right? And for me, I feel like it stems from people just not really enjoying what's coming out so far. And I want to get into a little bit of some specifics, right? And for me, I feel like I hear this quote like once every other week, right? Like if a week of gaming, nothing happens or there's not a game that everyone's super hyped about that came out, people say video games are boring now. And I think that's BS, right? I think that is baloney. I think that's hooey. I think that's it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to me. I've been playing video games since I was very young, right? Like the earliest I think I can think of is like, I want to say like 11, 12 maybe. And I'm 21 now. So almost half of my lifespan I've been playing video games. And that's only because I could play video games, right? Obviously, if I was 1 through 5, I didn't have the mental capacity to play video games. At least back then I didn't, right? But I play games constantly, right? I play them to this day. I play them almost every day. I play them as much as I can. I love it. It's one of my passions in life, other than like basketball and like music and all that. I love video games. And I grew up loving them. So when I hear this argument, it kind of makes me upset, right? Because I feel like it's directed at me, right? Like it feels like they're criticizing me. I'm like, what the fuck? But in reality, I feel like people just say that to most of the time they just say it to get engagements, right? Like they don't really actually say that. They just do it to get engagements online or to get people riled up. But I feel like some people genuinely do think that video games are boring and that nowadays there's no good games and all that hooey. But when they say that, for me, it feels like they are just talking about, themselves, right? Because obviously, ask anyone who plays video games or love video games, and if you say, are video games boring nowadays, they're like, no, obviously not. There are so many games that you can play right now that have came out this year that you can have tons of fun and are just great. But the people who say that video games are boring, I feel like they're just looking for like engagements, or if they genuinely do feel like video games are boring, they play the same rotations of games constantly, right? Like you hear the people saying that video games are boring, and then they fucking hop on Madden or FIFA or 2K or COD or any game that just is repetitive, right? Like Call of Duty, Fortnite, Valorant, League of Legends, CSGO, like all those games that, yes, that have been here for years and people love them to this day, like the 2Ks, the Maddens, the FIFAs, blah, blah, blah. They've been here for years. We know that. But obviously, if you play the same rotations of games, you get the new COD every year, you get the new 2K every year. Obviously, those games are going to be the same thing. And you're going to be like, damn, boring isn't as fun as it used to be. Because you only play the same games you've played since you were fucking 13. So that's why I feel like people say that. And people need to, like, expand themselves, right? Because I started off without multiplayer. When I got my first console was a Wii. My first video game console was a Wii. My first video game anything was a Game Boy, right? Those things, you didn't have online multiplayer. I didn't have online multiplayer on the Game Boy or the Wii or the PSP. I had a PSP, right? Those are all games where it was singular player games, right? It was just me and the screen. And I would have tons and tons of fun. I would sit there for hours on end, and I would have a blast. And growing up, I found multiplayer games, right? I found games where I could play with my friends and have fun, but I still loved single player games and narrative driven games and just games that have different gameplay other than shooting or other than, shooting a gun or shooting a ball, right? So that's why I think most people say that video games are boring, because they play the same games and they don't kind of try new things, or broaden their, search for video games, right? And another thing why I think people say that is because they only look for video games from like AAA developers, right? Like they're like, oh, I don't want to play the next AAA. I don't want to play Elden Ring because it looks too hard. But it's like, all right, sure, right? Pussy ass shit, because Elden Ring looks fucking fire. I've never played Elden Ring, but that is a game that I think looks amazing, and I want to play it so much. Like, I'm itching to play Elden Ring. But that aside, whenever they say video games are boring, they're only looking at the next AAA titles. Like, you don't have to look at you don't have to wait for EA to drop something for you to be, excited for video games that are up and coming, right? Like, here are some games that I think that I am extremely excited about. Some of them are AAA. No, actually, they're all pretty AAA, but there's still there's still games that I am like dying, and I mean dying to play. Black Myth Wukong. This game has been like in the works forever, and it looks phenomenal, right? Like, I've seen it's not coming out. It's coming out very soon this year. It looks very, very well made. Looks very, very fun. Looks challenging as well, which I like a good challenging game. But Black Myth Wukong, excited. Next one, Dragon Ball Z Sparkling Zero. Man, I'm going to talk about it a little bit later, but Dragon Ball Z games, they were my childhood. Dragon Ball Z in general was my childhood, and I still love it to this day. Next thing, Doom Dark Ages. I'm also going to talk about the Doom franchise later, but Doom, I'm very, very excited for a new Doom game. I love the Doom games. Next one, the Wolverine game. We haven't heard anything since the teaser, but I am very excited for a Wolverine game. I'm very excited for a lot of superhero games, just because, you know what I'm saying, Spider-Man set a high standard, so I'm trying to, kind of negate myself with not being super, having super high expectations for, the Wolverine game, or the Black Panther game with the Captain America game, or I think there was a Blade game coming out. No, there wasn't a Blade game, but, these superhero games, singular superhero story-based video games, superhero games, I try to keep, try to be like, all right, Spider-Man 2 is amazing, but, we got to chill. We got to chill, right? Not all superhero games are going to be amazing. I mean, look at Marvel's Avengers. You know what I'm saying? Case in point. The next game, Silent Hill 2, the remake. That shit looks like it's going to be so fun. I love horror games. I wouldn't say I love horror games, but I love horror media. Like, I love horror movies. I love horror videos. I like horror games. I like anything creepy. I like Halloween. I like all that. So horror games, I really, really, really do like horror games. I'm getting more into them as I play them. Like, I've played a couple Resident Evils. I've played Evil Within, underrated games, by the way. I played Evil Within. I got to get more into the genre. So, I played Alan Wake. It's not super, it's not a scary game, but it's a thriller. So, very, very, very excited for Silent Hill 2. Definitely going to get that. Metal Gear Solid 3 remake. I'm very, very excited. And this goes to show how much I love video games. I've never played a Solid Snake game in my life, but I'm excited for the the Metal Gear Solid remake, bro. Like, I'm gonna play the first one, I'm gonna play the second one, and then I'm gonna play the remake, and then I got the fourth one up, and then I got the fifth one. Like, I'm excited to get into new series. Like, this is the thing about me. This is why I also feel like people say that games are boring, because they don't like dive into the video games, right? Like, there are so many games that came out years ago that are still hold up to this day, right? Like, just now I'm finding games that I want to play that came out, over 10 years ago, that I want to play just because they look fun, right? Like, yes, they're old. Yes, they're probably a little clunky. Yes, their graphics probably sound like shit, and maybe their voice acting is terrible, but that I don't care about that. Like, I genuinely don't. If I have fun with a game, that's all I need. Like, a game that I'm gonna pick up soon is Manhunt. That game is a PS2 game, and I want to play it because I'm excited to play it. Right now I'm playing Sleeping Dogs. That game came out also like on the PS2, PS3, and I'm having fun playing it. Even though the controls are a little clunky and the renditions of some of the characters look kind of bad nowadays, it's still fun to me. Like, I do not care. And that's also why I think some people say video games are boring, because they only look to see if a game looks like fucking, I don't know, Cyberpunk. Like, no, like, games shouldn't just be face value, or if they look good, they're good. No, that's not what they are. So those are some games. Sorry, a little bit of a tangent. Those are some of the games that I'm very excited for upcoming. And I want to talk about games that, but that aside, I talked about upcoming games, right? But I want to get into some games that I fell in love with that made me who I am today, gamer wise. God, calling yourself a gamer is so cringe, but I'm a gamer or whatever. These are the games that made me a gamer, right? So the first game that I ever fell in love with, like genuinely fell in love with, was Super Smash Bros. Brawl. I mentioned earlier that my first console was a Wii. And at first, I was like, when I was a kid, I had no console, right? And I begged my parents. I begged them, like, yo, guys, can I please get a console, right? Like, everyone has a console. And they finally folded. And they got me a used Wii. And I wasn't bummed out. I was excited, right? And I think Super Smash Bros. Brawl was one of the first games I got on the Wii, and I kid you not, I that's when I fell in love. Like, I love Super Smash Bros. Because of that game. The story mode, like, it has an actual story mode with an actual narrative and an actual, like, cutscenes, like, that. I fell in love with that. Like, I was so unbelievably happy when I would play Super Smash Bros. Brawl. It's one of the earliest memories I've had, where I had not a care in the world, right? It was just me and Super Smash Bros. Brawl. The next game that I also had on the Wii, by the way, Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 3. Like I mentioned earlier, Sparkling Zero, Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 3 is why I fell in love with the Tenkaichi games. I remember playing it on the Wii. I remember literally, this is very vivid. I remember this very vividly. I was the, what's his name? I forgot the human guy with the afro. I forgot his name. I'm blanking right now. But I got stuck on this level and I just could not get past it whatsoever. I was that guy, right? I was a dude with the afro and I was fighting Android 17, if I'm not mistaken, in the tournament. And I just could not get past that. And I remember after that, like, I would fight him and I just couldn't win. And I think I didn't give up necessarily. It's just like I just kind of took a break, and then everything past that went fuzzy. Like, I don't think I ever completed that mission, and then I think I got my PlayStation 4, so I wouldn't play the Wii anymore. So, like, I remember that so vividly. I don't know why, but I fell in love with that game. And that's one of the main reasons why I'm so excited for Sparkling Zero, just because I grew up playing Budokai Tenkaichi 3 on the Wii. Another game that I also had on the Wii. This is the Wii games, right? The Hulk game. I forgot what it was called, but it was a Hulk game. I think it was based on the movie with Edward Norton. I think that's what his name is, the actor. But that game was so fun. Oh man, Hulk was one of my favorite. Hulk was probably my favorite character, my favorite superhero growing up. And when I got that Hulk game, oh my goodness, my 13-year-old self was over the moon, bruh. And I was pretty old to be 13 and liking superhero games, but I didn't care. I loved Hulk. I loved playing that game. And I also remember, this is also another thing that I vividly remember in the Hulk game. I was stuck in a mission. I forgot who I was fighting. It was like these 3 other, villains, and they were all like ripped. So they were, basically villains that were strong enough to be the Hulk. And I remember you had to beat all 3 of them within like a certain time limit, and I just could not beat them, and I was so frustrated as a kid, and I think I stopped. That's why I stopped playing the whole game, because I couldn't beat them. So, and obviously I never went back to it because I got the PS4, like I said earlier. But whole game amazing. Next game right here, Iron Man 2 from the movie on the PSP. I remember when I got this game, I remember going to Walmart with my parents and going, back in my day, old head talking right now. Back in the day, you'd go to where the games are, and, they had the consoles up and all that thing. So I would go there, play the console, look at the games, you know what I'm saying? And I remember they had the PlayStation portable games up. And I remember I saw that Iron Man 2 game, and oh my gosh, when I tell you, I brought my dad instantly, and I begged him for that game. I'm like, Dad, please, if I ask for anything, it is this game, please. I'll never ask for anything ever again. And I begged for this game, and he got me it. And man, that game was so fun. I remember you'd play obviously as Iron Man, but you'd also play as War Machine. And honestly, I don't remember too much about the game, but I just remember loving it. And I remember that memory about me begging my dad for a game. Like, I don't know why, but I find that memory so joyful, just because, like, imagine, like, I'll never be able to do that, right? Like, I'm not going to be a kid again, and I'm not going to find the joy in begging my dad for something and then him getting me and me just being so excited to go home and play it. Like, I'm never going to get that, right? And it's sad, but I'm also happy because it is something that I experienced, and hopefully a lot of you out there have experienced or will experience, right? If you're super young. But yeah, another game for the PSP. These are all for PSPs. The next couple games, next 3 games. Midnight Club 3. Man, and this is why this game for me is super special to me, because it is a racing game. And the thing about me is I don't really enjoy racing games. I find them kind of boring. But for me, Midnight Club, I think why I found it so fun is because the customization was just like, I've never seen it before, right? Like when I was a kid, this was my first racing game, and I remember I would just spend hours customizing cars. I remember just literally making a car for my family members. I'm like, yo, hey dad, can I make you a car? And then he's like, yeah. And I would just spend, an hour or two just making a car and showing it to my parents or my brother, or not my brother, or my sister, or my cousins. And then, like seeing how they thought of it. And I think that was so fun. And the racing, like I said, I don't really enjoy racing, but something about, making your own car and customizing it kind of brought out the creativity in me as a kid, and I really, really enjoyed that. So that's why I love Midnight Club 3. Has a very, very special place in my heart. The next game, Ben 10. I think this was the younger Ben 10, from the original 2003 show. I think that's when it came out. But this is it was a game obviously based on the show, and I just remember I loved the show. I still do. I really, really do love Ben 10. But it was based off the show, and oh man, it was also one of those games where I just had so much fun, right? Like being Ben 10 and controlling the aliens. I remember Forearms, Heat Blast, I think that was his name, the ball dude, the cannonball. It was the Diamond Head. Oh my gosh, bro, just thinking back on it, I had so much fun, right? Like imagine getting a game based on one of your favorite shows at the time, and I was just having a lot of fun. But yeah, that's going to be it for this episode. I just wanted to talk a little bit about video games just because, I hate when people say that video games are boring. Make sure you like, subscribe, leave a comment, and I'll catch you guys in the next episode. Peace.